If we want to be the best version of ourselves and give the best version of ourselves that we have to offer to our loved ones and family or friends or whatever you do in your life, as men and women and fathers and mothers and husbands and wives and brothers and sisters or whatever is evolved in your plate that you're involved with, um, then sometimes that takes taking a breath and taking a step back and making sure you're getting what you need to refill your cup and your well so that you keep having water to give out to others.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident.
Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Michaela Cox. Michaela is a multi-published author and speaker who writes and speaks on diverse topics ranging from faith, spirituality, motherhood, parenting, family, and to grief and loss. Michaela writes and speaks of her life experiences and learning to strive and overcome her disability of being legally blind, plus being divorced at age 26 and then at age 38, the loss of her husband. The last forcing her to have to journey through widowhood and single parenting while still managing her disability. Her book series includes a book titled Now I See, which talks about her own life journey and the story of 38 Triple D, which goes from much tribulation to thriving in all things in life. Michaela is striving to find her own way as she is following her path, traveling the journey before her and striving to thrive in all things, no matter where her journey may take her in life. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Michaela. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here as well. Look forward to our conversation. I'm
Definitely.
sure that the listeners and I will be able to learn a lot from you. So, Michaela, one of the things I focus on for the new listeners or people watching, I focus on a person's origin story so that we can connect in a very short period of time to the person that's on the show, basically, to have that connection and that commonality, right? Because people will fall into our stories in certain ways, which makes them connect to us and want to, participate and listen to the show even closer. So, Michaela, please tell me your origin story and what key things from your childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently.
Great question. I was originally born in Texas. I now live back in Louisiana. Um, I'm 45, so I was in the late 70s. My story very much starts from the beginning with the what I call the 38 triple D, which is what you described of 3Ds by the age of 38. I was born with my visual impairment, and I was actually born totally blind. Um, as you so correctly said, I have a book series on my faith. And for my own personal background, I come from a household and a belief system of Christianity. And so we believe that God decided to grant me my sight at 7 months old, even though it's still impaired. And had that from the beginning where I've never had a day or taken a breath where I don't see things not the way that most people do. I have a very lovely, complicated concoction of visual impairment issues. It's makes it fun, but I've done my best to overcome and strive and to thrive and achieve things despite what I maybe have been realistically expected to do or not do. I kind of like the title of your show, which grabbed my attention because I really don't give a heck. I mean, you can take that phrase two different ways. You can either say you do give a heck and you really care, which I do in some respects and in some ways if you're talking about those type of things. But as far as people's opinion of me, I really don't give a heck. I'm going to do what I've got to do and do what I have to do. And if you tell me no, that pretty much assures it's probably going to happen. So don't really give a heck what people think about that. I'm just going to do me and do what I got to do. So I did grow up legally blind and visually impaired, and that had its own a myriad of assortment of things throughout childhood, socially, academically, in school. I mean, we could probably talk a whole show on just issues related to life with a disability and advocating for yourself and having accommodations and the things that you have to do with varying disabilities to acclimate and adjust and be accepted and make a life work in a world that doesn't always gel as well, because you're totally having to relate to the world differently than the average person. So you're always, if you can't move the mountain, you're always going around it or under it or over it. So you're always looking for outside of the box things to get around what it is to live with a disability. So, which makes you resilient and resourceful and all these good positive tools that are in your tool belts, but it doesn't mean that it isn't a process or complicated at times or not easy either. So, but you figure it out, right?
Character building, right? That's
Definitely.
disabilities or no disabilities. That in the end of the day, depending on where you fit in the spectrum of life, we have character building things that we have to decide. Are we going to try to circumvent them and overcome them, be resilient, as you mentioned, or are we going to be somebody that's just going to lay down and die and just live on that hamster wheel of life and go to work, go home, get paid? And you're so right about give a heck can mean both things. Absolutely. But in the context of my show, it's like I want to showcase people that have that attitude. They don't give a heck about anybody what they think. So they've given a heck about the number one thing they should themselves, right?
Yep.
Because if they're not working on themselves, how could you be a good mom? How could you be a
Right.
good person? How could you serve humankind without actually worrying about you? So it's a double-edged sword, I guess, or a flip of a coin. Both are required, right? We
Yes.
have to give a heck about ourselves and not give a heck about other people and
Yeah.
their opinions, right? The committee of
Yep.
they, I call them. There's so many of them out there that think they know
Yep.
our lives better than us, right? And why do you need that? Why do you need us to do that, Michaela? Like, can't you just figure it out? Everybody else adapts, and because
Not
they don't see it through
really.
your eyes. They don't see
Yeah.
it
I
through
mean,
your lenses, right? So
yeah. And usually if I have to ask for something, that means I've already no, I can't do it, or I wouldn't have asked you in the first place, or I've tried other things first. I'm not one just to I'm like, whatever. I'm like, okay. I don't have a lot of patience for that. I'm like, you either want to help or you don't. Just either say yes or no. Let me go on about my business. Don't give me attitude. I don't have time.
yeah, don't you love people though? Instead of just being direct and saying yes or no, they give you a long drawn out story, which gets to the same answer you didn't need,
Uh-huh.
which is no, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
Don't waste my time. Just let me know one way or the other so I can do the next thing that I need to do, please. Thank you very much. Which sounds kind of witchy, but it's just
It's
what I've
not.
learned to
It's
develop
you just
over
get
the
to a
years.
point you're protecting your boundaries, right? Your mental boundaries, your emotional boundaries, because at the end of the day, even if that circumstance doesn't work out, you still have a family to deal with. They need you to have all your faculties in order, and nobody
Yep,
should have the right to be an energy vampire and suck that away from you, right? But we're
yep.
still going to deal with that, aren't we, Michaela? We're still going to
Oh,
have that circumstances. And some days we're going to be able to deflect and be direct and blunt, and people can call us witchy, as you mentioned, but we
well,
still
I
have
was
the
trying
right
to
to
be
be
somewhat
blunt.
diplomatic instead of the other word, but
I know what you were saying. I get it. That's okay. At the end of the day, people that are offended um, by somebody that's direct and short, it's because they've had so many people before that just wasted their time instead of
yeah.
just coming out and saying no, right? Or yes. So I appreciate that. Um, so you've been legally blind since birth, obviously, and has not stopped you from accomplishing so many things from writing books to being a speaker. You speak of overcoming your disability and having grown up with a cousin that is completely blind. I've seen him flourish in ways that most people couldn't even fathom. He has the ability, though he has not seen me in years, when he does see me, it can be 4 or 5 years, and I talk, he knows it's me. He'll remember details that
No,
we had in our
that's a,
conversation 4 or
I
5
don't
years
have a,
ago.
sorry, I apologize. I don't have a cousin. It's a friend of mine from college. I'm the one I don't know where that came from, but I've had friends throughout life that's the case. Like I have a girlfriend that is completely blind and a guy friend from college that's true of, but it wasn't a cousin. So, but I do have friends in those circles. That is true. And we
Okay.
do talk throughout the years and we pick up where we left off. And they've done things that I haven't, and I've done things they haven't. So it's just each of our own journeys. I didn't mean to cut
Of
you off.
course. Well, yeah, if I was going to finish off where you would have, that's okay. I'll finish it off now. So, he has flourished and taken his, not everybody that's blind is going to have the same capabilities. That's not what my point was. My
Right.
point is how has your blindness specifically enhanced specific areas of your life?
Um, let me I'm not saying any disability isn't interesting, but visually, in my experience, visual disabilities or things related to the vision are very interesting because you could have 50 people in the same room with the same root cause. And if one little thing is off, it can impact them totally differently from the next person and the other person for the next person. So my root cause of my visual impairment is what's called optic nerve atrophy. And supposedly there's a lot more stuff that's supposed to come with it. And for whatever reason, I never had all the other stuff that's supposed to come with it. It's just strictly affects me visually. I'm not even sure what all the other things are because I never had to deal with it. And I'm not a medical person. I just know how the doctors have always explained everything to me and related to it in layman's terms. For anyone who has a medical background that might be in your audience might know more of which I speak of and could explain it better. But the way that it was always explained to me is when you may be in an anatomy and physiology course or a biology course, or you're at the eye doctor and you see like the graph or the chart of an eye, you'll see the optic nerve is supposed to be the color of purple. My color, what just happened, is the color of a vanilla folder, which means it's extremely pale and light. Like a matter of fact, when I first got diagnosed when I was 3 months old in February of 79, prior to them coming up with the diagnosis, the first person my parents took me to, I think it was my pediatrician, said, "I hate to tell you this, Mr. and Mrs. Swinney, my maiden name, your daughter does not have optic nerves," meaning that they were so pale they couldn't even detect them except for a specialist. And basically what the optic nerve does, given the right shape and the right color, it allows the bloodstream to go through to tell the brain what to perceive, to send the messages to the eye so that the eye can take in the information. Well, when your optic nerve isn't normal like mine, then you have bloodstream that can't go through the way it's supposed to, which interferes with that process of sending the messages to the brain to tell the eye what to perceive. So you're basically looking at a very delayed reaction, and it takes a lot longer to do things depending on various environmental factors. Like, are we talking about night vision versus daytime vision? Is it earlier in the day as opposed to I've used my eyes all day? Is it small print? Is it contrast, or does it blend? All these different, it's not as simple as do you see this or see that? I'm like, I do, but there's a lot of variables. And then let's not stop there, and let's add nearsightedness to it and astigmatism to it and nystagmatism to it and very crappy peripheral vision and very crappy depth perception. So it makes it fun. A lot of things to take into account in my particular equation. Like I said, there may be other people that have very different visual issues that come from different places or similar to mine, that if they didn't have all 6 of those things, it may affect them totally differently, or they may have other things at play. So I find the variety of visual impairment related disabilities very interesting and very complex more times than not. Some real life examples, because this may all sound like a lot of information and mumble jumble if you're not following and know how to relate to that, is I always had accommodations when I was in school. I always had to sit at the front of the classroom. I always had extended time. There was various years where we played with different type of accommodations. I would have readers some years in college, especially in high school, pretty much from 5th grade on. I did all of my audio, academic books on audio. So even though I'm a writer, I'm a horrible speller unless you give me a list to memorize, because what y'all have seen in print over and over again, I've heard. So I don't necessarily recognize it in print, even though I know how it's supposed to sound and pronunciate it. Obviously, I don't drive. I mean, I am one for trying to work through things, but I can tell you that driving and legal blindness should not go together. Not a good idea. Y'all are all welcome. The roads are safer, um, for everyone. So while I can't do anything about that, I can find ways around that, like doing, thank God we have Uber and Lyft now. That makes life so much easier than opposed to in years gone by. Or I pay people to take me places, or friends are gracious enough to give me rides. So there's always a workaround or a way around things. Another example would be stateside. Most of us have to take the ACT or the SAT. Down south, we do a lot of ACT unless you're going off somewhere in Ivy League or whatever. So we all take the ACT for college entrance, as I'm sure you're well aware of. And for most people, that's a 4-hour exam. Not in my case. When I was in high school in the 90s, the late 90s, 97 to be exact. So 96, 97, when I was taking it for college, I would be given usually time and a half to 2.5 times longer than the average person, whatever that is allotted for the test. So if the ACT is 4 hours, I was given up to 12 hours to take it. So I would take 3 to 4 days out of my classes. And when we go to my guidance counselor's office, do a section a day and listen to it on audio tape, and then circle the answers in the test booklet because I can't do Scantrons. And then my guidance counselor would transfer my answers that I had circled onto the Scantron to be submitted. So taking the ACT was no small feat or process for me. So I took it twice, and then I said, I'm done. I'm exhausted. I don't need this. I have what I need for college. I'm done. I'm good. I'm not going to keep trying to beat my record when it's that much of a ordeal. When I took the GRE for grad school, instead of, I think it was a 3.5-hour exam, and I had up to 7 or 8 hours to take the test, where I sat in a cubicle. A reader read to me what was on the screen on the computer, and I told her or him, whoever it was at the time, what answers to click. That's just some examples.
So you've had lots of character building challenges on your journey to where you are today. But one of the things though is, having this visual impairment, has it literally enhanced anything within your life? Has anything become better for you in the sense that you've made the best of it, and because of it, this is the outcome?
I think it has, like you said, has given me a lot of character building. I think it's made me who I am. I think it's made me stronger. I think it's made me resilient, do my due diligence. It's made me really resourceful. I'm flexible to a point because I have to be willing to create different solutions that other people wouldn't think of, outside of the box type thinking. It makes me very resourceful. I'm very much an Uber planner and organizer. My world and work goes better when I have order and not chaos. I do much better when I can be organized because it makes my world work. So I feel like I gained a lot of tools that not only help me with my disability and functioning in a world with a disability, and it gives you a different perspective and it gives you a different point of view, but it also prepared me for the future challenges that I would face, such as the divorce, and then losing my husband at 38 and still having to use them as we keep traveling that journey as a family, me not having a husband and my children not having their father. So
Yeah, that's a lot for anybody to deal with, even if you're not having a disability such as what you've lived with your whole life. What do you do to keep yourself motivated?
my children, I have 2 kids to take care of. When my husband died in 2017, they were 6 and 3. Now they are 10 and 13, soon to be 11 and 14. So I'm quickly already in the teenage years and fast approaching the second one being in teenage years, God help me, which he will. And I will have a high schooler next year. So I'm like, I'm not so sure I'm ready for that. But okay, here we come, ready or not. It's the way it goes, right? Things always change. That's the one constant. But and I know that that's what I'm supposed to do for them and for our family. And that's what my husband would want. And like I said, I'm a woman of faith, and I know that's what I would be called to do. And so I need to do what I have to do.
So your Christian faith keeps you driven and motivated. because you
Right.
have faith that things will work out.
Yes, even though that's sometimes more challenging than not. I will not deny that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a Christian too. I hear what you're saying. It can be we can, people in our lives today will always point and say, why me? Why me, God? Why is this going on with me? What did I do to deserve that? And you probably have gone through those periods of your life. Maybe you haven't. I know I sure did. What do you utilize outside of your Christian faith or within your Christian faith that helps you deflect that negativity that creeps into your mind?
Well, outside of my own personal belief system of you don't stop, you don't give up, and you don't quit, and you do your best and you make the most of it, I'm a firm believer in counseling. Thank God for counseling. Uh, I have a very good counselor I love, and I will always go to her. And then I have a strong network of friends where I live, so that's always a good help. And then obviously my community at my church and different tools that of self-care that I like to do, meditation, prayer, journaling, my writing, of course. Yes, I have my public writing that I give out to the world, but then I have my own personal writing that I like to do that helps me. It can be very therapeutic and cathartic. Um I like to listen to music a lot. I relate the world through music, probably because I'm such a auditorial person, because visually it's not so much how I relate to the world. I relate a lot through sound. I have all sorts of things I do, just different things that work for me. And that kind of goes into one of the points that I talk about a lot is self-care, is the importance, like you were saying, we have to take care of us. And self-care isn't selfish in and of itself. It's just simply means you're caring for yourself. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions and misnomers around it, is it's not a bad thing. It's much in life, it's not what you do or or what you do with it. It's how you do it, is whether it makes it bad or good. And so self-care is a very good thing. If we want to be the best version of ourselves and give the best version of ourselves that we have to offer to our loved ones and family or friends or whatever you do in your life, as men and women and fathers and mothers and husbands and wives and brothers and sisters or whatever's evolved in your plate that you're involved with, um, then sometimes that takes taking a breath and taking a step back and making sure you're getting what you need to refill your cup and your well so that you keep having water to give out to others.
Yeah, that's so true. It's good that you have all those different avenues that have been able to help you. Do you have anything internally to you that's a trigger that makes you understand you need to reach out to a friend or talk to your counselor sooner than later? Do you have anything that you out like inwardly or outwardly that makes you realize that you're triggering that you need to, walk away before things boil over?
I know certain times of years are more challenging for me, usually milestones or certain dates related to my husband's death and life and what we went through together. So I know for sure I need to have something on the books and maybe not do as much during those time of years because my brain and my emotions are in overload. And when you have a full bandwidth, you can only do, if everything's all cool and good, then you can take more on. But if things are a little more chaotic in your mental space or your bandwidth, maybe that's not the time you want to be at your heights of your productivity, because it's probably not going to go well. So I know when to pull back a little bit. I know maybe when it's okay for me to be out and about and miss s- social butterfly versus I need to turtle, as I call it, and kind of pull in a little bit to focus on me. It's a delicate balancing act. I can feel when I mean, I don't get it perfectly. Like, I'm never here to say I have all the answers or I do things perfectly, but I can offer the knowledge that I have and the lessons that I've learned, and I know what works for me. But I know when I'm feeling a little more stressed or a little more frantic, or if my thought process is a little more kind of out of whack, then okay, maybe I need to pay attention to that and kind of get it back on kilter and centered and focused. So, okay, it makes me stop and think, and it says, okay, why am I thinking what I'm thinking? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? What's underneath this? What's causing it? Let's evaluate this and let's see what we can do to pull it back and get it on track. Which goes to like some of those dates, or some topic or something, or maybe it was a really crazy couple of days and I need to take a breath, things like that.
Well, self-awareness is something we have to work on, wouldn't you agree? It's not
Yeah.
something that just happens. Like you
It-
talk about understanding dates and feelings, and so many people don't though, and then they let those dates creep up on them, and all of a sudden the day's here and they haven't prepared themselves. And you can never be 100% on course or prepared, as you mentioned, but we certainly can do things to live a purposeful life, and self-awareness and focusing on it, having realization. I always tell people, you know what? Look at what's you're feeling that way. Like you mentioned, you're feeling a certain way, and you question yourself. Why am I feeling this way? Well, so many people, instead of questioning it and trying to work through it, and again, it's not always possible to work through it at that moment. Maybe it takes a few hours or a day. But so many people, what do? They turn to addiction issues. They turn to turtling all the time, not just part-time. They're living on a hamster wheel of life. And my point is though, is that self-awareness takes work. Reflection on your day when you go to bed takes work. Reflection when you first get up in the morning. What do I have to accomplish today? This, and this. And along with you bursting that to yourself, if you understand your body triggers, you will understand that certain things might make your chest tighten up. It might make even if you haven't gotten out of bed yet, you might be a little bit more tense. And then evaluate that. Is it something I can put off because it's making me feel kind of this way? Or maybe you can talk, like you said, talk to yourself and talk yourself through it before it even gets to that point. So when it does come to that point of the day, you can get through it that much more. So to me, it all has to do with self-awareness, reflection, and many times a day,
Yep.
right? Constantly reevaluate myself, pardon me.
Sometimes when you are self-aware that things are a little crazy or out of sorts, then you may need to take that 5-minute break and go pray or just take a breath and do breathing exercises or go meditate or listen to a song that helps change your mood or whatever or that looks like for you. Or the other thing is, if I know it's going to be a hard day, then I may say these are my top 3 things that I absolutely have to get done. And once those are done, then I can go chill out and not overload my plate that day.
Yeah, and that's, again, that's great that you talk about that. I hope people listening or watching understand living a purposeful life isn't easy. It isn't hard. It's a process of developing patterns and processes, or seeing patterns, developing processes, so that some days are going to be sucky, but
Yep.
you don't have to make your life sucky forever. You can get through that character building moment and still have a great rest of your day. You don't have to have a bad day.
Nope.
Right. So, yeah, I
I
like
like
the
to
fact
call it systems of operation, knowing what works for you and implementing them. And
I like that.
very much purposeful, but it comes to live purposely, it comes with a lot of intentionality, which has a lot to do with the choices you make.
Yeah, I like that though. System of operations. At the end of the day, nobody, when we were born and we grew up and went through school and we go through all these challenges, disabled or not disabled, nobody handed you a manual and said, this is what you have to do, did they, Michaela? Nobody did that. So life
Nope.
is full of trials and tribulations. And in order to understand what, like they said, doctor, it hurts when I do that, like that old joke goes, well, the doctor says, well, then don't do that. Well, it's the same sort of idea. If something makes us mentally or emotionally, and we understand our body triggers feel that way, then should you be doing it all the time? Sometimes you can't avoid it because it could be a family circumstance and you have to put up with it, but you might learn tools, right? Use tools, part of me, like you said, to listen to a song or whatever. Maybe it only takes 5 minutes. I time myself out. There's nothing wrong with timing ourselves out. Some people it's 5 minutes, some people it's an hour, whatever the case may be. Some people it's a podcast, like you said, it can be a song, it could be, some people like documentaries, right? It's just finding those things that make you rise above the camped feeling, the crap that you're living at that moment. It doesn't have to be a life of that moment though.
Yep.
So you talked about, I like the fact, because I have this in my written down here, about being cathartic, right? So you've written a number of books, one being Now I See, about your own life journey and the story of the 38 Triple D, which I'd like to know a little bit more about if you wouldn't mind sharing. But one of the things I wanted to mention first, though, I agree with you. I know when I wrote my own book, it was very cathartic,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And you mentioned that as well. putting pen to paper or typing on a screen, whatever the case may be, having your brain have the ability to let that out through our fingertips is very, very healing, right? So I appreciated you bringing that up. But can you tell us a little bit more about Now I See and that 38 Triple D?
Yep. So y'all heard the origin story of the disability and that I'm very much grounded in my faith. So the disability brings many pieces to it in and of itself. So I grew up going through K through 12th grade in college with that. And then that created a lot of kind of issues about not knowing for sure if I was adequate or insufficient or, oh, what's the other word? There's another word I put on it and it's escaping me now. There was usually three. Not good enough. That's the other one. Sorry. That was what it was. And then I had a lot of struggle with making friends because, I'm assuming, you're at least seeing me on the screen right now. I'm a redhead and it was not hard to figure out who was the visually impaired girl in school. It's not something that is a discrete disability that you can kind of cover up. Okay. It doesn't work that way. It's very apparent to all the kids in the classroom what's going on with me. There's no decoding it or covering it up, okay? There's nothing you can do about it. But so that caused a lot of issues and I didn't really kind of get accepted until late in high school with a very few select people. And then I kind of came into my own in college. Like you couldn't pay me to relive middle school or high school, but college, oh yeah, please let me relive my college years, okay? That was like the ultimate. It was the best. So I kind of got established there and but prior to that there was a lot of struggle, not just academically but very socially. But a good thing that came out of that is I valued my good near and dear friendships and I'll just do about anything for them and I'll fight for them for I probably some relationships in my past I've probably stayed around too long, but I wanted to make sure that I did everything I could and they're very important to me, so I'll protect them. But so I value those close, correct, good friendships, not just the ones that hurt you, but the ones that you really need in your life that you're supposed to have in your life. So that's probably the upside of that, of struggling with peers and social issues or social situations, for as long as that the ones that I have, I fight for and I protect and I'm loyal and I'll do whatever it takes to keep it going. But so you get through high school and you get through college, and I met someone like most of us do at university and college, and we dated for, I don't know, 3.5 years, something like that. And of course, we graduated and got married right after graduation, like everyone does, right? The American way. It did not go well. There was a lot of issues in that relationship that was very hurtful and very intimate and very personal and the most um personal aspects of a marriage. I don't mind sharing it, but I don't know if that's something you want to be known to your audience. It involved our what we did or didn't do in the bedroom, and he had internet addiction issues, and so we I tried to make it work, and it did not work by his own choices, and so I left. That was a very hard decision for me because, as we've talked about, I am a woman of faith. I've grown up in a family where divorce is not something you do. My grandparents were married for 28 years before my grandfather passed away. My mom's dad before I was born. My parents are fixing to hit their 50th anniversary in November. So it's just not something you do. Until our generation, meaning me and my three cousins, we didn't get divorced in our family. So that was a core belief for me that I never saw being a part of my life. And I probably spent the better part of the first 6 months of being separated, just working with my counselor, trying to figure out, do I stay or do I go back or do I leave? Because it was not something I expected to be a part of. Well, no one does. No one decides to get married and say, we're going to be divorced, okay? Or you don't get married. But coming from the place that I was, in a place of orientation of family beliefs and my own personal beliefs, it's just not what I wanted for my life and didn't see. And so I struggled with it. It wasn't something I came to easily or quickly, and it wasn't an overnight decision. And I really was torn over it. But I eventually decided that that was what was best. And so I got divorced February of '05, and then I was blessed and fortunate enough to meet someone not long after that, and we got married in '07. That was my husband that passed away in 2017.
Wow, you've been through a lot on your journey. Um, None of it something that you think would be, you know, that you couldn't overcome, but you don't want to have to go through that and overcome it. But like you said, nobody wants divorce. I'm divorced as well. You certainly don't get married thinking, oh, okay, we're getting married. I'm saying the vows, and on my calendar, I'm going to put down the day that it's going to fall apart.
Right.
It just doesn't it doesn't work like that.
Never get
And
married. So yeah.
well, we put a ton of energy, and unfortunately, I was having a conversation with a friend this morning about the same thing. In a marriage, it has to work. There has to be conversation. It can't be a one-way street. Otherwise, it eventually becomes very tiresome. No matter what the circumstances of what is causing the challenges, it becomes emotionally draining, where we dread seeing that person. We dread
Yep.
being around. It could be a group of people, not even a person. I've had it happen, a group of people where I just disconnected myself from them because everything was boohoo woohoo. Everything was this is doomsday kind of conversations, and nothing was happy. And I always tell people, if you're in a marriage, if you're in a relationship, whether again it's singular or it's a group of people, if you're in that circumstance and you feel icky and like you need to shower when you are done being around them, or even while you're with them, you wish you were having a shower, it's time to figure out how to exit stage right. It's not healthy for you. This life is in session. This is not a dress rehearsal, and nobody has the right to make you feel trapped or feel less than worthy.
I think the other piece of that is I think it can be equally exhausting, whether it's in grief or you're in a bad relationship or marriage and you always feel like you're around people that where you have to act and put on a front, because acting constantly is exhausting.
Oh,
It's
yes.
easier just not to go than have to always have on a front
Yeah,
for
it
whatever
is.
reason. You're trying to play a part, or you feel like that's the easier answer, or you don't want to deal with the question of the conversations, or you feel like you have expectations you have to meet. Whatever the reason is that you're acting is, having to act all the time and put on a front is just like, I'm done. I'd rather
Yeah.
just go home.
Yeah, you get to a point in life where it's not about quantity, it's quality. You can
Yeah.
have one good friend and still have a great life. You can have closeness to a couple family members and have a good life. You don't need to be like, there's people that gauge their lives about saying how many friends they have or how many associations, and they got this going on and that going on. But you can see there's no real happiness,
Yep.
right? They're just on that hamster wheel in a different way, and they've never figured out how to live purposefully and enjoy a select few and then
Yep.
live the rest of your life. Because at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be, God isn't going to be going, well, sorry, you got to go someplace else because you didn't have 10,000 friends. You
Yeah.
didn't have this going on. You didn't have that going on. You're a complete failure. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen that way,
No, it
right?
doesn't.
God wants us to be at peace. Like you mentioned earlier, be kind to one another, be happy, be humble, right? And just be a person that's willing to serve, because if you serve with a giving heart, you're going to get back. You don't know when. Things happen for us, not to us. There's no
Yeah.
timeline. We just got to live life and be the best version of ourselves.
Mhm.
So, one of the things you specifically talk about, which I'm kind of interested to, I've seen it as part of the service that I was looking at. You find meaning in all things, especially the word grace, and you've broken it down into specific meanings for each letter. Could you please share what grace means to you?
Well, obviously, faith-wise, it is the grace of God, and I think it also can mean giving yourself grace, not just the grace that we find in God, but if you're having a stressful season, then like I said, lighten up on yourself. I mean, I'm not always perfect at it. As a matter of fact, when I was a new mom, not a young mom, because I had children a little bit later in life, because like I said, I went through a divorce and then we got married, and I was 31 and 34 when both my kids were born. So I wasn't young, but I was a new mom. Um, I also decided to go to grad school. Eh, let's have a kid and go to grad school and let it be 8 months old and go to grad school. And then, oh, let's add another kid in that equation while in grad school and write your thesis while you have a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old who's not sleeping through the night yet. Yeah, that was a fun semester. Not the best plan, but hey, I lived. So my point
Yeah.
is, that was a really busy time. 5 years for me. I was mom, wife. My husband was in the military and he was in school, and we were married, and we had one, and then we had 2 kids. That's a pretty full plate for adult living and doing all the adulting. So I did not do the best at self-care during that time because I either felt like if I was doing schoolwork, I needed to be with the kids or cleaning house. If I was cleaning house, I needed to be with the kids or doing schoolwork. If I was with the kids, I needed to felt like always one was falling or not being attended to. So I didn't feel like I had a lot of time because part of my disability is it takes me 10 times longer to do things. So while I'm good at academia, it takes a lot of work. Like in college, I didn't have a part-time job. I went to school. That is my only job. When I'm in school, that is what I do. Like in college, I digress a little bit to make the point. I went to class. I came home and worked with readers 20 to 30 hours a week, which would be a college job for most people. And then when the readers left, I did my homework. That's it. So when I was in grad school, I spent 20 to 50 hours on grad school work, not a job, not house cleaning, but simply time I put into my academia to do as well as I did. So during that 5 years, I was extremely busy. So I didn't do a lot of self-care because there was literally no time. I lived, breathed, sleep, did what I had to and wanted to do with my husband, took care of my kids, tried to clean house and do grad school work. That's it. So all these books that I'm writing now, I didn't write in grad school. I was writing for professors. And actually, it's kind of funny. I got all the ideas for the books in grad school. And so I would write them down and tuck them away. And then now I'm writing them because all I could do was write graduate papers, and all the things you do in grad school. So when I got out of grad school, I got 20, 50 hours back in my week. So while I was not always good at self-care, I learned to give myself grace in grief. And that was actually how it came about. I promise there's a point to the circle I'm going in. It all connects. It really does. I was having a conversation with a friend and another work project that I do. She's like, girl, you need to give yourself grace. I'm like, yeah, well, in grief, I've learned how to give myself grace. And then I thought, grace, okay, now we got it. So that's how it came about. It was finding grace through grief. And it's the 5 keys that I feel like no matter what your struggle is and your adversity is and your obstacle is, you can use these because even though my obstacles have been disability, divorce, and death, they may not be yours and yours may not be mine. But the idea of overcoming is the same no matter what you may be trying to overcome. There may be different idiosyncrasies to the different obstacle you're overcoming that aren't the same as a disability or being a widow or a single mom or going through divorce, if it's a medical issue or if it's a financial issue. But the choice to overcome is the same no matter what you're overcoming. Overcoming is overcoming is overcoming. And so there's certain skills that are involved in overcoming. And I actually knew these skills from an early age because it's what I had to develop to overcome the disability. It just so happened what also I could use when I was going through the divorce, when I lost my husband, and still use while traveling the journey of grief and loss and being a single mom and being a widow. So I'm still using them. So it was kind of like muscle memory. It's like once you learn them, you have them in your tool belt because we all know there is no escaping this life without some type of obstacle or adversity. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and what kind and how many and to what degree. Okay. And how long that season is going to be. So I would rather have the tools to know how to equip myself for when that comes because it is coming. You're either in it, you just got out of one, or you're headed towards one. I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but that's just it. Okay. I'm not one for beating around the bush. That's reality. And if you haven't figured it out yet, you're probably going to figure it out soon. Hate it for you, but that is what it is. That's called life. Um, so obviously I didn't word this when I was a kid and a teenager the way I do today. But I realized that oftentimes in life, if we know our why or our purpose, it grounds us. And for me, that is my kids and my faith. So the first step of G, and this is a lot of information, and literally you could unpack every single one of these things, is being grounded, finding your grounding in grief or in life. Because like I said, these apply more than just to grief. Just about anything in life, you need to know your why you're doing what you're doing and your purpose. Because it grounds you, it keeps you going when things are hard if you know why and what you're working for. That takes you to the R. It takes you to redesign, meaning daring to not be defined by your circumstances, but to define it for yourself. Choosing that, yes, this is hard. I'm going to be a victor and not a victim. I want to not just survive, but I want to thrive. I choose that I'm going to do whatever it takes to do what I have to do to make this work. If I have to go around the mountain, if I have to go over the mountain, if I have to go under the mountain, if I have to saw through the mountain, whatever that is, whatever verbiage you want to put on that answer, you're going to find a way to see yourself doing what you have to do. I heard an expression one time, and I don't know how to edit it. Hold my beer and sit back and watch. Basically, I'm going to do what I have to do, and you're not going to tell me no, and you're not going to stop me. And I don't care. I don't give a heck. Um, I'm going to do it. Like I said, there are some things that are unavoidable. I will never be able to, or nor should I ever be able to drive a car. That's just not smart. Okay. I'm not talking about things like that. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm not necessarily in charge of the hand that I was given with the disability and the divorce and the death of my husband, but I am very much in charge of what I choose to do with it and how I respond to it. Do I always do it perfectly? Do I always have the answers? No. But we get to decide, we get to choose what we want out of life with the hand that we were dealt. That's what you have control over. That's what you have power over. That's what you get to decide on. And so that's what, when you find yourself in those hard seasons, and if your life is crumbling, then you get to say when you're able and you've kind of sorted it through, because it takes a minute, and it takes a lot of minutes sometimes. After losing my husband, it took me about a year to get back to my writing, because I was doing all the things to take care of my kids and get us set up and get our life started again. So you may have to take a step back from what you were trying to do and kind of regroup and then get back to it and redesign. But after you've had that minute or that time, then you can say, okay, this is not what I wanted, but what design do I want for my life now? What course, what direction do I want my life to go in when I'm trying to define it for myself and not just be defined? And yes, we have to accept this as part of our life, but we do not have to accept that that is our only option. And there's a difference in those two statements. Okay, so GRA. I didn't want to lose track of where I was at. Learning to live in abundance. That can mean financial, but I'm not speaking of financials in this respect. I'm not a financial planner. I have one. Thank you very much. I don't plan finances. I mean, I do my monthly budget, but I'm not like an investor. I am speaking more of, and I think this is sometimes the more challenging piece than actually making the choice, because we can make choices all we want all day long, but if we don't have the discipline and the mindset to stick to it, we're not going to see it through. So I almost feel like the mindset and keeping an abundant, a positive, a healthy frame of reference in our mental space in a good direction that keeps us true to our choices is sometimes more challenging. We get all of these thoughts in our head all day long, and we can't control the thoughts that come into our head, but we can very much control what we accept, what we take on as our mental space, and what we allow to become our mindset. There's a reason why in our society that we say mindset is a game changer, and that if you put your mind to it, you can do it. If you put your mind to it that you can't do it, you're probably not going to do it. So there's that. And then we come to the C, which we've touched on as being choosing care and clarity over chaos and confusion, the self-care, what we talked about a lot in this. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to have a good mindset that's going to help you to stay true to the choices that you want to be part of your why. You're just not. You're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be run down. You're going to be burnt out and not very good for anyone, much less yourself. And so you're not going to have that clear frame of mind that keeps you in that positive mindset to make those good choices that you wanted for your life. That brings you to the E of being essentially equipped. All of this takes tools. There's no one in life, no matter how much we may want to admit it or be comfortable with it, we all need things at some point. You're not going to go on a trip without a car or a plane ticket. You're not going to get very far. You're going to pretty much stay in the same place, and it takes gas to make that car go. It takes gas to make that plane get off the ground. I'm not a pilot. I don't know how planes work, but I know it takes something to make that thing move. Okay. Or you're going to need a ticket on a bus to go from point A to point B, wherever you're trying to get to. So it's very much like that in life. And aside from, unless you want to starve, you're going to need food for the road trip or the trip. You're going to want to go find a restaurant to eat at or whatever. You're going to need a place to stay. You're going to want fun things, whatever you take on your trips. Life is very much like that. You're going to need things to get you through life. You're going to have to ask for help. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you vulnerable. You may feel vulnerable, but it's not a bad thing. I mean, if you have kids or you've ever taught, you teach kids when you have a question, what do? You raise your hand and say, hey, I got a question. What's up? Explain this. Help me out. There's nothing wrong with that. You're just learning. You're getting the next thing you need to go on to get from point A to point B to accomplish what you wanted in life. Asking questions and getting what you need is just being smart. It's being useful. It's equipping you to do what you wanted. So you can either not ask the questions and not get what you want out of life, or you can figure it out and do what you wanted and live through and live out the choices you decided you wanted. And so you're just equipping yourself. So those are the 5 things that have gotten me through just about everything in life. So do you
That's great. Yeah, Grace, that's great. That's a good breakdown. Um, Something that we can all learn from, right? In order to keep ourselves, well, as the first G is, grounded, right? So, and keep us moving forward and not being camped in life. So what are you currently working on as an author, or are you expanding yourself into other areas of as an entrepreneur?
Um, I have just released what are we in April? I came out in March, the Finding Grace Through Grief 3-book bundle, and then I've decided to add to it that I'll be starting soon a devotional and discovering the truth from the myths of grief. I think there's a lot of misnomers, and I think there's truths that people don't realize about grief. So I'm going to write those, and then I hope to have another book out this month, the second book in the Now I See series. I got to get started on that, maybe May. So I have books that I hope to come out in all 5 of the series this year if I stay on track. So that's what I'm working on. I have one more book to write this year for November, and then I'll start writing for 2025.
So you got a lot of things on your plate, but uh,
Always. Never just
informa-
doing one thing.
information that needs to come out so that you can help the world, even one individual heal, which is a great thing. So I appreciate you putting all that effort in to help out humankind. So, Michaela, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
I would say there are no guarantees or promises of tomorrow in this life. Life is short. And so you need to choose well and give it your best shot so that you can live your best life and thrive.
It's a great message. People that are listening or watching, there is no guarantees. As I mentioned to somebody yesterday, um, at the end of the day, today is the present, yesterday is the past, tomorrow is the future. How are you spending your present day? Are you sitting and worrying about everything? And there's a reason why there's a correlation between depression and anxiety. One follows the past, one follows the future, and neither of them are going to get you anywhere except stressed out, tense, right? You need to understand that you're going to have depressive thoughts, you're going to have anxious thoughts, but try to stay focused on, today, on the present moment. What can I do at this moment? What baby step can I take that's going to change my life, make it so I'm not camped anymore and I'm always on the climb? Yes, along that climb, you're going to have those character building moments. You're going to work on things that are going to help you break out of that moment, and you're going to continually live a purposeful life. It just takes some effort. You can reach out to people such as Michaela or myself if you are stuck, and we'll be glad to have a conversation. I know I certainly am, and Michaela is as well, because at the end of the day, being stuck and feeling that there's no hope is terrible. It's better to have a life of hope and then have faith that something that you do is going to make a difference for yourself and others. So I respect your time and I respect my listeners' time. What's the best way that people can reach you?
All my books are on Amazon, and I have a website that's myheartfeltmeditations.com.
Right on. I'll make sure that goes in the into the show notes. Those listening to the show that are new, go to giveaheck.com, click on the podcast area. You'll go in and you'll see a picture of Michaela, and you'll see abbreviated show notes that'll have the website and social media connections for Michaela. And so you can reach out to her. Is there any last comments or words that you would like to share with us, Michaela, before I wrap up the show?
Give yourself grace and live your best life so you can thrive and get the most out of life, because you only get one.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you. So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Michaela. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck.
Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.